This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 601, originally aired March 6, 2024. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. Today is a very, very special episode of the podcast because last Sunday was the 15-year anniversary of the very first episode of the Tapping Q&A podcast, something that started with a landline and some calling cards and a $15 microphone and a little connector from Radio Shack so I could hook my phone to my computer to record the interviews to the production that we have today. If this is the first episode, or if you've been with me for 15 years or anywhere in between, thank you very much for being a part of the show. The show has been downloaded millions of times in over 150 countries all over the world. It's really pretty amazing. If you haven't done so, I'd really encourage you to check out the podcast archive. If you go to tappingpodcast.com, really simple, tappingpodcast.com, you will find the entire history waiting there for you. If there's someone in the tapping world who you think I should have talked to, I probably already did. If there is a topic that you would like to learn more about and how you can use tapping for it, there's probably an episode for that, tappingpodcast.com. It's really amazing that the show has existed for this long, and it's only existed for this long because people like you continue to consume it, continue to give feedback. Thank you very much. So to celebrate the anniversary, my buddy Brad Yates, who has been one of the most frequent guests on the show over the course of the 15 years and has become one of my dearest friends in the tapping community through that particular relationship, interviewed me about the history of the show, how we got here, what I have learned, and all of that sort of stuff. So you can understand a little bit more behind the scenes, but more importantly, kind of a crystallization of the number of the lessons that I've learned by doing all of these amazing interviews and having these conversations. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Brad Yates, or here's Brad's conversation with me about the history of the Tapping Q&A podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Get Ready. And this is kind of fun because today I'm bringing back my dear friend, Gene Monterastelli, because it's kind of a big deal. He has this podcast, Tapping Q&A, and it's 15 years old. That's quite an anniversary. So thank you for your service creating that, and congratulations, and welcome to the show, Gene.
Thank you very much, Brad. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the history and all the good things that have come from it.
I am honored to have been on the show a couple of times, and most of my good friends in the tapping world have been on it, and it's been a great platform for telling folks about tapping and introducing them to all the great ways that it can be used. And of course, you built from that platform to do all the amazing things you do, like the 24 hours of tapping in support of the Peaceful Heart Network. So, but what is it? For you, having conducted all of those conversations and talked with all these folks about tapping, what are some of the things that you have found to be most profound and most interesting?
Yeah. So, I mean, and some of that kind of goes back to where it started. I am super dyslexic. I love audio. I love consuming things by audio. Like that has just always been my mode of learning. And so I was fascinated by podcasting and audiobooks and all of that sort of stuff. And I realized very, very early on that a really easy way to get free training from someone is to ask to interview them. Because I can pay so much to be in your class, I can pay even more to work with you one-on-one. But if I say, I have a podcast, I want to interview you, because people in the transformational space are very bad at pointing at themselves, they show up. So it literally, you ask the question, what did I learn from this? I showed up as a learning tool. Like literally it was coming from this place of wanting to learn from as many really thoughtful people as possible. And I think that the biggest lesson that I learned from all of this and just having these conversations is recognizing the fact that people and transformation is really, really messy. And I don't mean that as a pejorative, but I mean that as like when we're doing transformation, the people that I have learned the most from, it's not because they had a perfect 3-step plan and I say this and I tap on this and I uncover this, but instead I have a framework in which I understand the human condition and the way people navigate their way through things. And if I'm working from the foundations of these frameworks, then what it does is it gives me the ability to guide someone. And one of the perfect examples of like a disposition, one of the first 10 episodes I ever did was I interviewed a hypnotist by the name of Dan Cleary. If you took Al Pacino and Yoda, put him in a Hawaiian shirt and smash them together, you would have Dan Cleary. He is one of my favorite humans who has ever lived. Like, he is just a delight. And because he works with pain management, he shared this idea of the 10% solution. When someone would come to him as a hypnotist, typically they had spent years in traditional medicine, and they'd sit down with him and they would say, he would say, how would you feel if 90 minutes from now after hypnosis you were pain-free? And they're like, that'd be great. And he's like, forget it. It's not going to happen. He's like, but tell me how your life would be different if 50% of the pain went away. Tell me how your life would be different if 25% of the pain went away. Tell me how your life would be different if 10% of the pain went away. And in the process of doing that, like, he's like, like, if I have a back issue, I can sit for 2 hours. I can go to dinner. I can go to a movie. My life gets better. And so he's like, great, we can do that. So it's like a framework of understanding healing and transformation. It's not a, I say this and I tap on this. Websites tapping Q&A. I'm sure you get emails like this all the time. It's like, what are the tapping phrases for insert issue? And the other thing that I've learned in these conversations is that clients give practitioners way more credit than they deserve because we only remember the things that are useful. So like when we do a round of tapping, one of your videos, 7 to 10 minutes long, over the course of that, you're going to say anywhere between 25 and 50 tapping phrases. And someone's going to go, Brad, you're so brilliant when you said. And if you had 50 tapping phrases, one phrase, 2% of what you said resonated with them, and that was enough. And so, right, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm glad you're getting the subtext of the conversation here. You are brilliant 2% of the time, Brett. That is exactly right. You heard me clearly. But what, yeah. But again, what happens is like we give people credit in this way. And so recognizing, like talking to all these skilled practitioners, what I was learning was, how do they hold space? How do they ask questions? How do they bring their experience to bear as a goal, but not as an agenda? And like I have an outcome for what I want a tapping session to be like when I'm tapping on my own, or if I'm working with a practitioner, or I am being the practitioner. Really good, skillful practitioners have a goal, but they don't have an agenda of, we do this and then we do this and then we do this and we do this, and it magically, like the people I interviewed who are the best at this are the folks that are going, okay, great, I'm going to hold the space for you, and I'm going to make sure you're leaving this safely, and I'm going to bring my experience to this around my issue, because a lot of my interviews are super topic specific, and I'm going to bring to bear, this is how I understand the human condition, which then creates this framework. And the really beautiful things is that I don't have to have the same framework, but hearing you talk about your framework, for example, perfect example of this, you and I disagree on whether or not we should use the setup phrase when we start something, that even though I love and accept myself. But that conversation of hearing why you use that and do that, and that back and forth, gives me food for thought when I'm sitting down, because like, it's really easy for me to think I'm really good at this because my clients tell me I'm really good at this. Because they're the ones that keep coming back, and the ones that don't think I'm really good at this wander off and they go work with someone else. So I'm getting this positive reinforcement loop inside of this thing. And so like, it's so, like, I love for the most part, the openness and the egolessness of the people, at least the people I've had on my show that have had those conversations where it's kind of like, well, this is what I've learned and this is why I think this thing. And to be in conversation in that way is so useful. The other lesson that's come from that for me is like, the goal of the tapping session is better. It's not finished. It's not done. But how do I make it better? How do I make it easier? How do I, again, going back to Dan's idea, this 10% solution, that I've had lots and lots of folks share that idea with me in different ways without using that exact vocabulary, and recognizing, like, we're unfinished in this work. And the really thoughtful people are like, great, how can I create a little space of safety and a dollop of better?
Well, my catchphrase is feel better, do better, live better, not feel perfect, do perfect, live perfect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I live in the R's and I live in the mores. Like that's a place where I am. I want this more. I want it. And if I do that, then the next moment I get a chance to do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. I know of Dan, but have not heard a lot of his stuff. Coming from the hypnotherapy world myself.
Yeah.
So what, see how to phrase this. Well, there's the one that, so who's your favorite guest that you've ever?
Well, other than Brad Yates, and like, truth be told, I think you are my most frequent guest. And I think part of that is, and this, like, my fate, like, there are some interviews I do that are super, super topic specific. Like, we're going at, like, we're having a conversation about autoimmune, or we're having a conversation about postpartum, where it's like, it's super hyper focused, where we're trying to get information. And those are great. The rest of the conversations are that. They're conversations, they're not interviews. And one of the reasons why I love having you on so much is because, like, I'm like, every single, like, with a few exceptions, I never know what we're going to talk about. It's just kind of like, what's interesting at the front of your mind right now, and let's poke around the edges around that particular thing. And, like, that's one of the reasons why, as a medium, I love podcasting so much, is we consume podcasts through the exact same earbuds that we talk to our loved ones on when we're using our phone. I am so ridiculous in this particular regard. I have a waterproof Bluetooth speaker that is in my shower. And there is an intimacy, even though it's a broadcast, it doesn't feel like that when we're receiving it. And so, like, the thing I love about it is, like, in the guests that we have, is it feels like a conversation that hopefully the people who are listening in are feeling like they're sitting in the coffee shop with us having that particular conversation as we engage in that particular way. And so, and the other thing is, like, truly my favorite guests are the people who have a lived experience that is so radically different than my own. Like, because that's the place I'm going to stretch the most. Like, there's only so many amen chorus conversations that you can have. At a certain point, they stop being fulfilling. Like, it's great. It's great to have our worldview reinforced. It's great to know that I'm normalizing my experience in this particular way. And it's also great to be super, super stretched because of the person's culture, lived experience, family, gender, training, modality, like all of those things, that when someone is further away from me but is showing up with the exact same goal, how can I use my giftedness so I make a day a little easier for someone else? Like, when I walk away going, oh my gosh, in a million years, I never would have thought about it that particular way. And it doesn't mean it changes my mind, but it's great to go, oh my gosh, there is such another way for us to think about healing and transformation in the human experience that's so useful for me as a person, as a practitioner, as an interviewer, as just a human.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's so great about the show, because you bring on so many different people. And as you said, we have different ideas about the formula and how to use the modality. And that's so great. It doesn't mean that we change the way. I had someone recently tell me how they were no longer watching my videos because they thought somebody else's videos were better, and that I should really modify my videos to be more like his.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if you found what you want in his videos, why should I change mine? So you don't lose watchers. I said, I won't lose my watchers. I'll lose them if I try to do it differently. But I do like listening to other people. It's like a musician. Mm-hmm. A rock and roll musician is going to continue to play rock and roll, but they might really enjoy, like the Stones. We're big fans of country music, and because they would listen to these other things and get inspiration. So to have when you bring on all these different folks and you get all these different perspectives, as opposed to getting into our echo chamber about, well, this is the one way that it should be done, and being able to explore all these different ways to use this modality. And you can say, oh, just like, people will listen to all kinds of different musical artists. They don't just go, well, I only listen to, I love David Bowie, but I don't just listen to David Bowie.
Yeah.
And so it's being able to hear these different things, say, oh, okay, you know what? Sometimes I'm in a Bob Marley mood. Sometimes I'm in a classical music mood. And so that's one of the great things about the Tapping Q&A is this exposure to all of these different practitioners and the different ways of using tapping and just those different concepts.
And the other thing that I love so much is, like, I love feedback. Like, the folks who are listening, positive or negative, like, the very first episode of the podcast was live for less than 90 minutes before I pulled it down. Because I had created this because I thought it was clever. I had created this in GarageBand using the loops. I had created this super, super cheesy 80s power ballad. And because I thought it was funny. And someone sent me an email. She's like, why are you undermining the quality of your work with something so silly at the beginning of it? And I was like, oh, yeah, right. It's like showing up professionally is a useful thing. Like, I'm not changing what I think, but that sort of feedback's really, really helpful. I've got some really great feedback over the years where folks are critical, or they'll go, oh my gosh, when you said, and I read the email, I'm like, that is not what I heard in that particular conversation. But what you heard in that conversation is really useful for me to hear as well. Like, I love it when you go, oh, you mean, and I'm like, no, I don't, but thank you for sharing that in that particular thing. Like, no, like, you connected dots I was not connecting there. And it's useful for me to hear that in that particular way. And so that, like, that give and take is so, so cool, because, like, it's like, I hope it's a conversation with folks who are on the show, but I also hope it's a conversation with everybody. Like, I do not have a monopoly on truth when it comes to transformation, and my close friends who are practitioners do not have a monopoly on truth when it comes to transformation. And like, there's certainly things we need to do professionally and safely. Like, we don't just follow any whim, but oh my gosh, the amount of wisdom that I have received from feedback and people responding to the conversations in a way that I did not hear them is just such an amazing gift to be in conversation in that way with an audience.
Yeah. Well, there's over 8 billion people on the planet. So to believe that there's one mode of transformation that's right for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we're off our rocker to think that. I mean, again, that's like saying there's one musical artist who's the perfect best musical artist for everybody.
We can't even agree on the fact that the world is round as a society. Like, if we can't grasp that simple basic fact of science for everybody on the same page, like, nothing's going to work for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing to see. So I have up here on my wall the Walt Whitman quote: "Be curious, not judgmental."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Always trying to keep that in mind, so that when I look at that, and so even in terms of listening to other practitioners and how they have their thoughts about, well, I think that it should be done this way, and trying to go, okay, be curious, not judgmental. Just as I try to do with all the stuff that I see on social media, and I'm not always successful.
So I actually have a little pre-flight checklist that I look at before every single client session I do. And number 2 is ask one more question. And because, like, I figure out things quickly, it's really easy to assume I have the answer. And the same is true when I'm having a conversation with someone. Like, one of the easiest interview techniques in the world that just makes the show very more dynamic is, so what I heard you say is, and then I just repeat back what I think I understood. And one of 2 things happens when I do that as an interviewer. I either get a, yeah, build, or I get, well, actually, and we get clarity about what is going on as we're doing that particular thing. And that skill as an interviewer, because I'm trying to create dynamic content, like, and it like literally went from the interview realm over to my practitioner realm. Like it went that direction where it was like, oh, following up and making sure I understand before I move forward with an interview guest creates this huge amount of clarity. Oh, look at that. When I'm working with a client, asking one more question, going, well, what I understand you said is, did I get that right? Like, it does a couple of things in a client session where it gives them a chance to like hear their own words, which sometimes is clarifying. And so I might be reporting back exactly what they said. And when they hear it back to them, they're like, oh no, actually what my experience is. Yes, but, or yes, and they start to build on it in that particular way. And so just having conversations with folks, trying to learn more about them equips me to be a better practitioner and being more curious in what I'm doing when I'm having those conversations.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is playing with, because you were saying that was how you used as an interview.
Yes. I was following you there, Brad. You know, explain the joke is kind of like dissecting a frog. You're just taking all the life out.
Some of these jokes are just for me. Cut to commercial break. No, there are times as when I'm working with someone and I think, okay, I've got it. Say, okay, side of the hand, and then it's just that instinct goes, wait, hold on a second.
Yeah,
one more, and it's just that thing. Okay, there's one more piece that, and you just kind of get that instinctive feeling of there's something not complete here, and I know that there's another. One more thing to go to.
Yeah.
And that's the thing going with all the interviews you've done is getting to hear how so many people approach that. And
The other really valuable thing in those conversations is in getting the feedback. And sometimes it's from an interview and sometimes it's from a piece of content that I've put up, is that, and I think this is something that's valuable for any content creator and any practitioner, is that there are times in which I feel like I am saying the sky is blue and the ground is down. And my audience is going, oh my gosh, the sky is blue and the ground is down. And it's not because I'm some great evolved being, but I've been thinking about this a lot. And so the things that are useful to my audience are not necessarily the things that are useful to me. I used to in January, February, for 7 or 8 years, I did kind of a year in review on the website. And it was like most commented on post, most downloaded podcast, whatever. And every single year in that, I included my favorite piece of content from the previous year. And for 7 years running, my favorite piece of content was in the bottom 10% of the content that was consumed by my audience. Because it was a piece of content that was for me. It was not a piece of content for my audience. And oftentimes as content creators and practitioners, like when I am hiring someone, I'm hiring someone to do something that is hard for me to do. That's why it's valuable. Therefore, it becomes really easy to mistake that the only way I have something valuable to offer the world is if it's hard for me to do. Because I equate hard with value. But the people I'm hiring, as we're in the first quarter of the year and we get done with this interview, my next conversation is with my tax preparer. Like, she is doing stuff, like my business is so uncomplicated compared to what she deals with. And like, I think my lucky stars, I have this amazing woman in my life because it makes my life so much easier. And for her, it's the most pedestrian thing to be dealing with. And so many of the tap-alongs and the teachings and the interviews that I've done, I've walked away from them going, boy, that feels really, really simple. And that's just because it's something I've thought about before. And again, that's not to say that I'm some great evolved being. It's just like I'm in a slightly different place. And so, again, people I hire, they're doing pedestrian stuff. The content I consume, it's easy for them to create because it's inside of their wheelhouse. And like, creating content over time has made me realize the easiest thing for me to underestimate is my own expertise. Like, because it's easy for me in this moment, but I don't think of all of the stuff that's got there, and to have these conversations with folks where they are over 12, 14, 22 minutes, easily sharing this stuff that is well won wisdom from experience and trial and error and all of that sort of stuff. And having that to be a reminder as a helper in the world, I don't have to be doing the most profound thing to be a helper in the world. Like, most of the people who consume our content are kind-hearted people who want to make the world a better place. Very, very few of the people who consume my content are my students, are my clients, who are doing it simply to make their life better. Almost all of them have an impact goal as well. It's so I can live better, so I impact my family. Even if I'm not a professional practitioner or a content creator, just the places that I walk, how can I be a helper inside of that particular thing? And to recognize the goal of anything we do, like as a human helping someone else or creating content like you and I create, is just to be useful. And useful is not complicated. Useful is not revolutionary. Useful is make a difference. And just recognizing and just like seeing over and over again through creating content and talking to people, like, if I ask myself the question, how can I be useful in this setting? Like, we have 9 ideas. 4 of them might be bad. 1 of them might be dangerous. 1 of them might be impossible. And 2 of them might be actually things I can do right now that'll make a difference. But just kind of thinking in those terms and like just watching the engagement of creating content for so long, recognizing, oh, right, it's okay if it rhymes with the stuff I've done before. It's okay. Like, it's so funny. Like, as a practitioner, how much more of my time is spent just giving pep talks and telling people that I believe in them, and how useful that is. And like learning, like, I don't have to be teaching something every single time I produce a piece of content. What are all the fun ways that I can show up in someone else's life and just going, you're not alone. Someone out here believes in you. Go. Like, like it's a different way of like showing up. Yes. Or a high five or
high five and however that comes across.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for us, yes, to take for granted what we have gotten good at over time, because, with anything, with enough practice, you get good at it. And then you start to go, oh, well, that's easy. And someone else who's struggling with it because it's new to them, it's not in their wheelhouse, whereas there's something else that they have. So it's treading that middle ground between not taking for granted the value we have to offer, or over having too much belief. I am the gift to the world, and I know everything, and everyone should do it my way. And it's like, How can I be so comfortable inside of my own skin that I have an honest assessment of my competency, capability, and resource state without undermining that or inflating that? Like that's in so many ways is the human experience. It's just figuring out how we walk that particular path. The other thing that is so cool in these conversations is almost everybody I talk to is mission driven. Like even especially the people who are doing something super, super hyper specific, because they're speaking from their own experience around weight or stress or autoimmune or whatever. And like hearing the timbre in their voice. And the example I'm thinking of has nothing to do with this, just because it was so devoid of the words. 20 years ago, I was in Reykjavik, Iceland. And my mother and I were there for a week-long horseback riding tour, and we had a day in Reykjavik. And there's this lake that is next to the town hall in Reykjavik.
and there was a protest going on. Like we'd seen signs of this thing. It was anti-nuclear proliferation something. And people were lighting candles in these little pot pan trays, and they were floating out into the river and or the lake. And this woman speaking in Icelandic, I had no idea what she was saying, but oh my gosh, could I feel her heart? Like you could tell that this was this thing that was so passionate and mission driven. And the people I've been lucky to talk to, like they're doing it because of that. And because I understand the modality and I understand transformation and I understand English, like I'm engaging with it on a different level than that experience of a language that I don't speak at all. But like it's so amazing and gratifying to be in a community of people who are so mission driven because they don't want people to suffer in the way that they have suffered. They want to give people the shortcuts that they have learned along the way so they can go and create something else. And like, it's amazing when you like catch someone when they've forgotten they're being interviewed. And they're just like speaking from the heart about this thing they care so much about. Like it's amazing to just witness and be in the present of that and making it like encouraging for me to show up in my own work with passion when I engage people who are doing that wherever they are.
And it's funny because as you are saying that, that's exactly the experience that I'm having right now as you talk about it.
Yeah.
Because you are mission driven. I mean, that's why so many of us always say yes to you. Whenever you say, hey, will you be involved in this project? Yes, because you're mission. So when you said, I'm so lucky to, it's like, yes, you can call it luck, but it's also call it law of attraction, manifestation, because that's the vibration that you're at as a mission driven person. You draw to you the people that are mission driven. And even in terms of what you were saying about your clients, the clients that I have are people who want to make a difference for other people. Yes, because those are the people that are attracted to that. The people who are not, who don't have that sense of, I want to make a difference in the world, are generally not the ones who are drawn to personal development.
Yeah.
They'll go watch some other thing about how to hustle to make money or something like that, but not come to this kind of work where I'm opening my mind, I'm opening my heart, I'm trying to, what we wouldn't really come to this work if it was just like, but it's just about me. I don't care about anybody.
Yeah.
I just want to learn how to put the oxygen mask on my own face first and not help. It's like they always say, adjust your mask before helping others.
Right.
But it's like, no, I'm not helping anybody else. It's just about me. It's like, no, these are the people who are drawn to this kind of work. And you attract these people because you are mission driven. And that's what Tapping Q&A has been, this mission, and likewise the other projects that you've done. And it's inspiring to watch.
Well, it's certainly fun from the inside out. Is that's like the one thing that anybody who works with me does is we always have a good time. As we're floundering our way through stuff, we're always going to have a good time in the middle of it because why not?
As long as we're here,
Yeah. Let's at least do that while we're in the middle of it all.
And it's the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what's next after 15 years? 15 more?
Well, I mean, again,
as long as you're having fun.
I mean, part of it is that like, I mean, I like the only job I've ever wanted was to be a radio DJ. I was years and years ago, I was living in Washington, DC, and I was doing dishes and I was listening to the radio, and the DJ asked a rhetorical question because he was a DJ and he wasn't talking to anybody. And I answered him out loud while I was doing my dishes. And I wasn't embarrassed by that. I wasn't like, oh my God, I just talked to the radio. I went, oh my gosh, how amazing is that? There is a culture writer by the name of Chuck Klosterman. He wrote Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puff, Fargo, Rock City. He's written about culture for decades and decades. He's about my age. He is from North Dakota. I am from Wyoming. We have numbers of very, very similar cultural touchstones. And he's brilliant. So we have similar cultural touchstones, and he says stuff that's smart and funny and insightful. And I am a better human because I read his stuff, even when he's talking about culture. And so he used to live in Brooklyn. And I'm standing outside of a bar down in Carroll Gardens summer weeknight, waiting for a date to show up. And I look up, and Chuck, in his red hair and red beard, is walking his sleeping child in a stroller down the street, getting whatever for dinner, I'm sure. And as he walks towards me, I go, "Hi, Chuck. I thought you were my friend. You're not really my friend." Like that was what went through my, like, literally, I saw him. It's like, it's my friend Chuck. And then all of a sudden, as the words are coming out of my mouth, it's like, no, I have this parasocial relationship with him. I've consumed hours of his audio. He has no idea who I am or the fact that I exist. And one of the reasons why I love audio so much is it's such a personal medium. It's a broadcast that is received like a narrowcast. And, some of the best conversations I've ever had in my life are because of questions that people have asked about my podcast. Some of my dearest friends in the world, and I don't mean professional colleagues, but some of my dearest friends in the world started out as an interview as a podcast where they had no idea who I was, and I just reached out. And like, for as much as it's giving to me, I don't see how I could possibly stop, just because that's the particular thing that is there, is like, it is a fruitful thing in that regard for me. And I also think, like, I think that's a good lesson, because there are podcasts I've done, I've been podcasting now for 18 years in different forms, and I have lots of different shows, and many of the shows have come and gone because they have outlived the usefulness either of the show for the audience or outlived the usefulness for me, or both. And so I think, like, a really good lesson from all of this is it persists because it's nurturing, and it's nurturing for me, and it's nurturing for my audience, or at least I hope it is, and it continues to be consumed, and I continue to get feedback. And so I'm hoping that's the case, because, like, especially when I'm not doing an interview, like, and you know this because you make videos all the time, it's a wholly unnatural act to sit in a room by yourself and speak out loud. Like, that's just weird. Like, until it's not, and so, like, it's because I could just think these thoughts anyway. The other thing that it's a benefit is anytime you have to explain something to someone else, you have to get clearer about it yourself. It's not just this idea, but it's like, okay, in 7 minutes, how do I organize my thoughts in such a way so that you actually get something useful out of it? And so at this point, like, there's no real reason for it to go away for those reasons. And the other thing is like, in podcasting for 18 years and 15 years in this show, like, the technology is so much easier. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, the first interview I ever did with you was done over a phone line that had a special adapter that had a headset so I could plug it into the microphone jack on my Mac computer. Like, I still have it. Like, I had to go to a Radio Shack. Those things, kids, go look up what a Radio Shack is. I had to go to a Radio Shack to buy this little device so that I could hook it to my landline so I could do an interview. Like, the other thing that helps something like this to persist is, oh my gosh, is it so much easier today than it was 15 years ago? That we can sit here in Technicolor and have a conversation like this, where that was an impossibility, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely old enough to remember back when the idea of video calls was like, oh my God, that's so impossible. It's so sci-fi. Now it's like,
well, so a million years ago, before I did all this, I was a computer programmer, and I was a consultant, and the first company I was working on, this was back when all cell phones were analog, and they were using a technology with geosynchronous blimps. So basically what would happen is a major city would have a blimp floating over it, and your phone would communicate with the blimp. So it's not a satellite connection, which is super, super expensive, and it's not the analog cell phone stuff. And in one of the presentations, because we had no idea what video conferencing looked like. The person is talking on the phone, like holding the phone up like this, and the other person is looking at their phone and they can see the person on the phone, as if holding it here somehow I did there. And the person holding the phone was wearing a red dress and the person in the phone was wearing a green dress. At that point, we should have realized we were not ready for video conferencing quite yet.
We've come a long way, baby.
Yeah.
Well, and in 15 years, you've come a long way and have delivered a lot of amazing content for folks. And glad to know that you've gotten something out of it as well, because so many of us have gotten so much out of it. And thank you for doing that, and look forward to your 20th anniversary.
Thanks for your time, Brad. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I hope you learned a little bit more. Again, go to tappingpodcast.com to check out our entire history. There is something that is waiting there for you.